the WhatsApp uncles haven't given up on furiously defending the CAA, the NRC, the NPR and the government's general direction and mismanagement of this entire thing. So here is your answers to the 5 questions that WhatsApp uncles are going to ask of anyone who still protests or disagrees with the CAA. First of all, this is what everybody is saying. The government has already passed the CAA, it's now a law. How can you still protest it? Tomorrow you will decide that you don't want to follow any of the laws. Are we to put up with this 17% people who continue to protest? Here's the thing. It's not just 17% of the country. It's not just one group religiously. There are people across the board who are protesting against the CAA, and it is our democratic right to do so. Just because the government has passed a law doesn't mean we cannot disagree with the government. Remember, we have the right to go to court and to actually challenge that law, which a lot of people have done. We have a right to write about it because that is our fundamental right, and we have a right to protest peacefully. This is how we won independence from the British. This is how this country works. Remember, the British passed laws almost every day that were not good for us, including the salt tax. And we stood up as a country and we protested, and that's how we became the India we are today. So can we protest a law that has been passed by the government? Of course we can. It's our democratic right to do so. Secondly, the Home Minister has come out and said, like a lot of the WhatsApp uncles, has said that this doesn't impact any Indian citizen, so we don't know why you're protesting. Now let me say this very clearly. Of course it impacts Indian citizens. I cannot say this enough, that if you go onto the internet, there is a website that has digitized all the conversations and debates that have happened from the people who were writing our constitution. It's all there, it's brilliant, and some of it is funny, so you should go out and read it. It says very clearly that while Pakistan was forming a Muslim nation, we were forming a secular nation. B.R. Ambedkar has said very clearly that in the fundamental rights of equality, of religion, of life, of worship, in the guidelines to the government as well, it says very clearly that equality, fraternity is part of who we are. We were always a secular country that didn't have a declared religion. Hence, the CAA basing our citizenship, whether you're giving it to me or to anybody else, basing citizenship of India on religion is fundamentally against the secular fabric of who we are as a country. So the argument of the fact that it doesn't affect any Indian doesn't apply, because of course it affects every single Indian. You're changing India from the secular country that it was to a country that bases citizenship on religion. And that's not okay. So the argument that it doesn't affect us doesn't hold. The second argument is we are offering now refuge to persecuted minorities. Why are you being such a jerk about it? Why do you continue to protest? What do you have against these persecuted minorities? Well, here it is. Nowhere in the laws amended does the government use the word persecuted. They have just said that provided you are from these 3 countries and provided you are of these various religions, you will actually be exempt of the paperwork that is necessary. They have not said persecuted anywhere, and even if they did, they have not specified or answered or clarified what they mean by persecuted and how a person will prove that they were in fact persecuted. Now let's take a look at the choices that they have offered. Now they have said Afghanistan, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and they have not specified why they have picked these 3 countries and why not the rest of our neighbors. Why not Tibet? We know that the people of Tibet have been facing religious persecution from China. Why not Sri Lanka, where there have been Tamil minorities who've been facing persecution? Why not Myanmar, with whom we actually share a border? We don't share a border with Afghanistan at all. Now, you might also say there are some arguments that have said this was part of a united India before the British. No, it was not. Afghanistan was never part of a united India. So it doesn't make any sense as to why you've picked these particular countries. If it's because they are declared as certain Islamic countries, well, there are other countries as well that are declared as religious countries, but you've not offered any sort of solace to their minorities. Also, you've left out the Jews, you've left out the atheists, you've left out those people who have just said agnostically that they don't believe in any one particular God. So there's no justification for why you have picked this except pure mischief to simply single out Muslim people, to make the rest of the country believe that Muslims are for some reason not to be trusted, that they're for some reason a threat to this country, or they're for some reason outsiders. Interestingly, these are the words that are being used right now by supporters of the government. If we are going to argue that this has nothing to do with Indian citizenship, it has nothing to do with any Indian right now, then why is it that people who are protesting CAA are being called Desh ke Gaddar? If it has nothing to do with me and I'm protesting, why am I a Gaddar? That's a very simple question I would like an answer to. Of course, there's also the whole point about, oh, you know, the government has said that there's no NRC, so why are you protesting it? The Home Minister said 7 times on camera that there will be an NRC when he chronologically pointed it out. Later, the Home Ministry said to Parliament, and I'm quoting this, that there is no decision yet to the implementation of a national NRC, which means there could be a decision tomorrow. No decision yet is a very vague, very open-ended statement. The government has not said that there is no NRC at all, or we're not going to do it. If you are going to do it, come out and tell us how. What is that draft? What are your plans? Why are we doing an NRC? Why are we not doing an NRC? Just a vague no decision yet is not good enough as a clarification. Then, of course, there's the point of the NPR. Now, the NPR basically, it says on the Home Ministry's website, still is the foundation of the NRC. The government is pushing through this NPR. It needn't at this point, when everybody is so upset, when tempers are flaring so high, just sit down and explain its position. The fact that they've included a question in the NPR or the birthplace of our parents actually exposes their intention here. The government has not answered questions about the NPR. Now, there's been another criticism, which your WhatsApp uncle will bring up, as to, oh, because you guys are protesting, the census is suffering, and this government is going to now have to make decisions without the census. Well, it's very clear. The census can continue as it always had. People come to your house, they ask you certain number of details. They don't ask you the birthplace of your parents. They don't ask you questions, these extra 6 questions that have been added, and the census will continue as is. The NPR basically allows the district official to mark out what they call doubtful citizens. A census doesn't allow that. Continue with the census. Don't continue with the NPR. It's as simple as that. Or, as it's very obvious in a democratic country, start a dialogue. Bring together, you don't have to talk to everybody. You can bring together a group of lawyers, of professors, sit down with them and answer the questions that are being asked. It's very simple. Conversation can solve any problem, but the government has opted not to converse or not to have a conversation up until now. In fact, you remember, the Home Minister in a television interview said, I'm willing to talk to whoever wants to talk to me. They were a group, a contingent of Dadimas, who then proceeded from Shaheen Bagh to speak to the Home Minister. The police turned them away and sent them back to Shaheen Bagh. So there's been no conversation up until now. What has happened though? People are focusing more and more on their differences. There's more Hindu-Muslim talk than there ever was. There is a constant spiral of hate and fear that beget each other. Now people are worried, oh, now we should actually band together because what if someone attacks us? And this is happening in all parts of society, and that is not good for us. Worst of all, the real killer, coronavirus, is on our doorstep. It has freaked out the entire world. But in India, somehow we've been distracted by what divides us instead of what unites us, and we have not been focusing on being prepared and ready. Our economy is in shambles and it's getting worse with every quarter. We've not paid attention. There is unemployment. There are severe problems right now with our economy and our GDP, to which we have not paid attention. This is what has happened. And of course, the 42 people who have died in Delhi, the 2 people who have died in Meghalaya, constant protests that take place across the country, the loss to public and private property, and the lives lost. However this conversation ends, we cannot bring back the 42 people who have died. We cannot restore for those families, Hindu or Muslim, what they have lost. What we can ask is for the government now to see that conversation is the only way forward. We can start doing this by not yelling at each other. Let's sit down and actually have a calm conversation at a time when there's so many very, very serious things happening in our country, why are we insisting on a law that has nothing to do with us? That, quite rightly, according to you, should not concern us. Why are we insisting on it? Why are we insisting on a law that makes an entire community of people feel unsafe? Why are we insisting on a law that divides us instead of unifies us? Why are we insisting on a law that takes us backwards instead of forwards? And if the final argument is that the Congress had come up with it, then aren't you better than the Congress? Isn't that why you were voted in and they were voted out? How can the Congress, having thought of it, be any justification for something that this current government does? We're better than this. We need to focus on the things that really matter: science and technology, development, infrastructure, education, health, beating the coronavirus, and fixing our economy. Good luck to us.